pleasure to introduce TCM host of Noir Alley, Mr. Eddie Muller.
Welcome to Noir Alley Live. It is wonderful to greet the congregation. We're in the Church of Noir. Hallelujah! Amen, brother. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. This is really, really fun, and I just want to take a quick moment to just thank TCM for making this all happen. That's all. I just want to thank everybody. I'm not going to do it by name, but I've been taking a little trip lately down memory lane and thinking like 25 years ago when I wrote Dark City, The Lost World of Film Noir. Somebody was like, what have you been smoking? If I said, one day I'm going to be presenting the world premiere restoration of The Big Combo to a full house in Hollywood as a host of TCM. They'd say, give some of that shit. It is a dream come true. So I thank TCM and I thank the fans because you guys have made Noir Alley a big hit. Okay, if you are avid Noir Alley watchers, you know that the gentleman I'm about to introduce has appeared with me recently on Noir Alley, and I couldn't think of a better person to come out here and talk about the work of the legendary John Alton on this film than a master cinematographer. He shot most all of Spike Lee's films before he decided to become a director himself and establish his own fabulous filmography. Ladies and gentlemen, the great Ernest Dickerson. I get a little evangelical on Sunday morning.
Yeah, this is amazing. Thank you for coming out, everybody. This is fabulous.
So, this is a fabulous film. Thank you, Ignite Films. Jan Willem, thank you so much for shepherding this restoration, which I unfortunately will not be able to see. So you've got one up on me because I have to go across and do something else. But there's a lot to talk about with this movie, but I really want to just focus on Alton because I got you here and I want you to talk about what makes him so special as a cinematographer.
Well, the book that he wrote called Painting with Light explains it all. He was a master cinematographer using light beautifully. He became the number one noir photographer in the 1940s and 1950s. And he won the Academy Award for shooting American in Paris.
For shooting specifically the ballet sequence.
The ballet sequence, yeah.
Which the actual cinematographer could not accomplish.
Yeah.
And so it was a shared Oscar.
Yeah, unfortunately. But
And how weird that it was for a color film when he is the master of black and white.
I mean, when you see his credit is so huge on the screen. And he just, he was a painter with light, there was no doubt about it. There's a famous image that's the final image in this film, which has become kind of like the quintessential essence of noir, the image of noir. And he did it with practically nothing. Zero. Practically nothing. They were supposed to shoot at an airport, and they couldn't get the airport. And Alton said, I don't need an airport, give me a doorway and some fog. And he provided the light, and that was it. And when you see it, it's amazing. And how light is used in the final sequence is a lot of fun.
And actually, just all the way throughout, it's fantastic, right? And Joe Lewis was the director of this film was kind of a last-minute addition to the whole thing. This is actually Cornel Wilde's baby, right? I mean, you will see a rare credit for a writer, Philip Jordan, who was kind of the de facto producer of this film, and it says, Phil Jordan's The Big Combo. He wrote the screenplay, and he was also a producer. But Cornel Wilde, this was one of his first films from his own production company, right? And he made the very smart choice of hiring Joseph H. Lewis to direct this film because they didn't have a lot of money.
Yeah.
So you can speak to how Alton's gift for turning an impoverished production into something compelling is kind of extraordinary. And there are many long takes in this film, which is kind of a surprise to me. But Alton, man, the way he sets up he gaffs his set, and then he just is so fast.
Now I want to talk about Gaffer, because the Gaffer is given credit. In the opening credits, there's a gentleman named Harold Sunby. Now when I saw the movie, I said, wait a minute, I know that name from someplace. He was the same gaffer on In Cold Blood for Conrad Hall. Years later, he also gaffed Cool Hand Luke, which casted him the Sundance Kid, all the way up until Fat City. And you know, it's not often that gaffers get credit in the opening credits of a film, but so when you see it, it's lighting, and the lighting means he was the chief electrician, and he was probably Alton's right hand man. And I wonder how many other movies they did together. I was trying to check out his history, but the gaffer is a very, 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 very important person on the set.
Yeah, I like that. This is why I love Ernest, because in Noir Alley, which I'm considering is an annex of Noir Alley today, we talk about the gaffers. I love that. I love it.
The art of lighting.
Interesting to note, the original the character Mr. Brown in this movie was originally to be played by Jack Palance, and there was a lot of friction between him and Cornell Wilde because Jack Palance wanted his wife to be cast in the film, and they actually shot footage with Jack Palance, and then he walked off the movie. So the hero of this film is Richard Conte, who just stepped in. He had played this character a few times before.
Yeah. And he's really, really interesting. He's actually the most interesting person in the whole film.
Yes.
He's you know, it's something when the quote unquote villain kind of like outshines the quote unquote hero, and he does an amazing job. I always wondered if Brown was actually his real name, because Richard Conte, you know, he had a career, and later on in his career, he played Barzini in The Godfather, and Italian-American actor. And looking at the film, his character's name is Brown, which is a very average American name, but the person he used to work for had an Italian name, Grazzi. I think his name was Grazzi.
Yeah.
And I wonder if he changed his name just to fit in or something, you know, just, you know, because he's so full of himself. When you see this character, he's always pontificating about how everybody wants to be like him, and because of the power that he holds. And
honestly, the character reminds me of some politicians.
Yep.
Some of the things that this guy spouts out, you know, first is first and second is nobody, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, but Joseph Lewis, you know, he was also responsible for Gun Crazy. Have you and you know, one of the undersung artists of film. You know, he always had lower budgets. He never had a big budget film, but he was one of those guys who just made miracles out of nothing at all. And those are the filmmakers that always fascinate me.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was his special genius, and it was actually Anthony Mann who said that when he approached a movie, he looked for the passages where he could really show what he was capable of, and like, this is the scene, this is the set piece, right? But then he said he learned that the important thing he had to do as a director making B films was to make the other stuff interesting until you get to those scenes. And you'll know exactly what the big scenes are in this movie. There's no mistaking them.
And it gets pretty racy. It gets, for 1955, 55 was like a watermark year in film noir, because you had this, you had Kiss Me Deadly, which were movies that really, you know, took noir, which was considered a dead genre. They took noir into a whole nother direction, which just has influenced films up till today. And you'll see, I don't want to say too much, but there's one scene that actually kind of pissed Cornell Wilde off. You know, it pissed because it involves his wife. And
Jean Wallace, who plays the female lead in this film, was Cornell Wilde's wife.
Yeah, and And then the two henchmen, Fanny and Mingo, a young Lee Van Cleef and Earl Holliman, and they played a hitman, and their relationship is very, very interesting.
As I have described them numerous times, the buddy button men. Yeah, but it was so because I had Earl Holliman as a guest one time at my North City Film Festival, and I said, "Wow, you know, that must have been pretty daring in 1955 for you and Lee Van Cleef to play those scenes together, because it's pretty obvious that you guys are in a relationship, you know?" And he was like, "You got that?" Earl, it was pretty obvious. And he says they didn't know it back then, right? Which is pretty interesting, because the scene that Ernest alluded to with Richard Conte and Gene Wallace, you'll know it when you see it. But something is going on at the end of this scene that is, I said to Ernest, I don't think the Irish Catholic guys at the PCA knew what was going on in that scene, or else they had to pretend that they didn't know what was going on.
I guess the Hays Code was losing a lot of its power by that time, because a lot of things got through. I mean, this is a pretty violent film for 1955, and some of it is ingenious. You know, the silence, and that's all I'll say.
Yeah, you'll see. This is the thing that I love most about this film, is the resourcefulness of the filmmaking, because they did not have much money at all. And so there's light figures in it, like what they're able to do to cover the lack of production value. And as Ernest just alluded to, there's a great use of sound in the film, and then a lack of sound. And you'll know what we're talking about when we get to that scene. We don't want to spoil it. But yeah, so Alton really had an amazing influence on the genre, and it's rare when you can say, people say to me, like, who's the epitome of an actor in film noir, an actress, and it's all debatable. It's actually not debatable who the greatest noir cinematographer is. It is John Alton, and he kind of stands alone in that regard. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, the amazing thing of being able to accomplish so much with so few resources. You know, because he didn't use a lot of lights, and that's the secret. You know, how to make just a couple of lights work for you. You know, and you'll see, it's an amazing looking film, and the final image is amazing.
Yeah, if John Alton, who kind of died broke, if John Alton could have gotten residuals for how many times that single image at the end of this film has been reproduced to represent film noir
in books,
he would have been a very, very rich man.
Yeah.
But now it's just the legacy has to stand, and it will. You know, so he is the guy. So how many folks in the audience have not seen The Big Combo before?
Oh, you're in for a treat.
This is fantastic. I love that. That we get to be the ones to bring you this film the way it's supposed to be seen up here on the big screen in a brand new restoration, thanks to a great